Welcome to this online presentation as a part of the 9th International Conference on Technology, Knowledge, and Society in Vancouver, British Columbia. My name is Mark Crouch. My topic today is virtual worlds, reality or non-reality. Multiplayer games are nothing new to society's repertoire of ways to entertain both individuals and groups ranging in size from as few as 2 up to groups ranging in hundreds or even thousands. This has been going on since social societies first formed. A multiplayer game is a game which is played by several players. Players might be independent opponents, formed into teams, or just be a single team pitted against the game. Multiplayer games have served as the cornerstone of social life in numerous cultures. Hieroglyphics of hockey, boxing, and handball line the walls of ancient Egyptian reliquaries. Mayan ball courts determined life and death, and attending gruesome gladiatorial games was a must in ancient Rome. The spirit of the game exists today, but in forms unimaginable centuries ago as technology has evolved. Slaying each other for entertainment purposes, however, is not considered appropriate in today's world or civilized world. Nevertheless, playing games with each other is still just a much enjoyed element of human interaction. This paper begins with a discussion of the sociological implications of the rapidly growing culture of online gaming, brought on primarily by the advent of the Internet. Specific focus is on the MMORPG, or massively multiplayer online role-playing game. This is also sometimes referred to as an MMO or an MMOG. A massively multiplayer online role-playing game is a virtual world with inhabitants controlled by its users. This world may have physical rules such as gravity and weather, its own economy, and usually has NPCs, which stands for non-player characters, that are artificially intelligent inhabitants of the world that create content for the users to interact with. More importantly, however, in a MMORPG, as the players interact with each other, they form their own social customs, codes of ethics, and languages based on jargons, emotes, and acronyms. They barter and trade with each other using player-crafted items and gold that can be gathered throughout the world by such things as killing monsters or completing quests for NPCs or simply getting lucky and finding wealth or power somewhere in the virtual world. The MMO is truly its own world, and millions of people around the globe have made it their home. The first section provides an overview of the history of online gaming and how the gaming culture took root. Online gaming trends over the past 4 decades illustrate how and why multiplayer gaming has emerged as the fastest growing personal entertainment genre today. The second section covers the inhabitants of gaming worlds and some of the social implications of their mentalities towards the worlds that they inhabit. A brief explanation of a few of the many intricate details of these communities dispels some common misunderstandings to outsiders as to the foundation and functioning of these synthetic worlds. The final section of this report focuses on the different ways that online gaming communities are changing and how they are affecting the way society today visualizes reality. With the upsurge of electronic culture brought upon by technological advances, there exists today a multitude of ethical issues that were not imagined even a few decades ago. Some of the most important of these issues were reviewed along with a few opposing views and a brief critical analysis. The conclusion section serves to evaluate issues presented in the previous sections. Speculation as to what might become of online gaming communities in both positive and negative scenarios is briefly reflected upon. Multiplayer games are really nothing new. When humans form communities, various forms of entertainment that involve a partner or multiple partners naturally emerge. The more obvious inclusions of multiplayer gaming communities that existed prior to the emergence of computer technology in the 1950s are not really relevant to the scope of this report. However, certain references to these pre-technology age concepts of multiplayer games may assist with the understanding of the evolution of those gaming concepts on into the electronic age. The historical focus of this report lies in electronic communities that are formed with each member portraying themselves as an alter ego, or more specifically known as role-playing. Civil War enactments and Mardi Gras celebrations should be a more familiar concept to those who have limited experience with role-playing as a recreation. Large groups of people gather in a centralized location, dress up in costumes, and behave in ways unfamiliar to a day at the office. People take on a different persona and live in a fantastical moment. The stresses of real life are momentarily forgotten as the subconscious surfaces. Halloween, thespian events, Renaissance festivals, these are real-life examples of role play. However, in these examples, technology plays little or no part in the activities themselves. The source, or really the birth, of online multiplayer communities dates from the mid-1970s on into the early 1980s. This was a time in our technological development when computer networks were beginning to appear throughout the United States and in Europe. Since personal computers were not yet popular or affordable to the average individual, these networks were not well known to the general public. Individuals with access to these networks were mainly computer scientists and college faculty and some college students. Popular on college campuses during that time were tabletop role-playing games based off of high fantasy literature such as Dungeons and Dragons. For these games included J.R.R. Tolkien's The Lord of the Rings trilogy and Robert E. Howard's The Conan Chronicles. These tabletop games were played with a group of people who created an imaginary character from a fantasy setting, which then interacted with an environment controlled and dictated by the dungeon master. A new pre-cyber culture emerged as a mostly young, male, and intelligent demographic who gathered in their parents' basements and dorm rooms to roll dice and slay dragons. The modern term nerd became defined during this era. This new subculture, which had access to and knowledge of computer networks, tried to find ways to utilize the new technology to play their games. Multiplayer communities researcher and author Celia Pierce wrote that these two emerging trends would converge in the minds of mostly male computer science students seems almost inevitable, and the result was the text-based MUD, or MUD, a networked, computationally enabled adaptation of the core mechanics of D&D style games. The MUD, or multi-user dungeon, allowed people from all over the world to gather via networks and play an avatar in a fantastical setting. An avatar was simply a digital representation of the player himself or herself. The players might interact with each other through text, solve puzzles, complete quests, and fight monsters put into place by the programmer or the creator of the MUD. Over the next decade and a half, the MUD garnered a small cult following that helped the genre grow. The next obvious step in the evolution of the MUD appeared to be the necessity to include a graphical interface. At this point in time, the MUDs evolved into MMORPGs. In 1996, Meridian 59 became the first marketed multiplayer game world with a graphical interface. This initial attempt was not considered a success for the indie company developer 3D0. However, it paved the way for the next generation MMOs that followed. Soon after, in 1997, Ultima Online and EverQuest took the gaming world by storm. These were smash hits as the number of subscribers passed 1 million for each. Game developers realized this potential goldmine, and throughout the next decade, an onslaught of MMOs appeared on the market. More popular titles of the time included Star Wars Galaxies, Asheron's Call, Final Fantasy XI, and Second Life. Of hundreds of new titles, older games would see a mass exodus of players moving from one MMO world to the newer MMOs with better interfaces, graphics, and features. The result of this trend was a mass exodus of its own. Newly published games made their way into a graveyard of MMOs with no subscribers and were often forced to shut down. Then, in 1995, along came the behemoth known as World of Warcraft by Blizzard Entertainment. World of Warcraft is the current powerhouse of the gaming industry with more than 12 million subscribers. World of Warcraft is a good example of a social activity that has gone viral via technology and the internet. With the total number of active subscriptions of all MMOs surpassing 21 million in the past year, the online gaming industry is said to be worth around $15 billion. Economist and one of the leading researchers in this field of study commented that the amount of people in the world that owned an account in a virtual world is in the vicinity of 20 or 30 million. He also said that by the time this study takes place in 2012, there should be more than 50 million people inhabiting these emerging virtual worlds. A major side benefit of this emerging social phenomena of the $15+ billion online gaming industry is the almost $200 million a year industry of people actually selling virtual merchandise and virtual currency for real world merchandise and currency. This mass migration to virtual worlds is a phenomenon some 4 decades in the making. Whether or not all elements of society think of them as interesting, significant, or even relevant, the fact is they're here now. Of the person who plays this type of game is that of a pimply-faced adolescent boy or a college student with no job and therefore all the free time in the world. The field presents many challenges. Methods of study and pertinent statistics are muddled and filled with speculation or conditional inaccuracies. When a game developer reports subscriber numbers, the number of people who have at some point in time subscribed to a game account is the number reported, not accurately the number of currently active players. Also, the amount of people simply farming game world currency to sell for real money is normally added to the count. Farming, or gold farming as it is known, is defined as the practice of selling virtual assets gained in a computer game for real money. Gold farming factories exist in China and other countries where low-wage laborers work in barrack-style housing, spending their days gathering World of Warcraft currency, which then their employers sell on the black market, and often do not accurately portray the demographics associated with the quote, virtual world, unquote. Studies of gamers done exclusively on college campuses miss the main audience. In reality, people in their 30s make up the largest concentration of players of MMOs. This is 6 times the number of teens that play and 3 times the number of college students aged 18 to 22. The average age of players is 35, and 26% of players are over the age of 50. Also, the majority of MMO players hold full-time jobs, and their average household income exceeds $85,000 per year, $25,000 more per year than the U.S. average. This causes some doubt as to the stereotype of unemployed youths as the main audience. The stereotype does also not appear to hold up for gender. About 80% of MMOers are male, although research on games in all genres show that well over a third of all gamers are female. As a valid way of life can be found in the attitudes of gamers. Castronova conducted a survey of 3,916 EverQuest players in 2001. He found staggering implications for the emerging gaming culture. 20% of the respondents agreed that Norath, which is the name of the world setting in EverQuest, was the home that they lived in, and they only traveled outside of it occasionally. Also, 22% said that if they could, they would spend all of their time in NORAD. Now, whether or not this implies that MMO worlds are rising in validity as a way of life, or that MMO gamers are disillusioned by reality, leaves room for considerable research. The apparent fact, according to Castronova, remains that a large percentage of MMOers actually live inside their virtual world. When the exponentially growing number of MMO subscribers surpasses 50 million, or 100 million, or even a billion, one can expect that real-life public policy will inevitably have to deal with the expectations of virtual world populations. Have emerged into a culture in which people band together to form cyber communities. These are commonly known in the game world as guilds. Researchers Tyrone Adams and Stephen Smith have coined them as electronic tribes, or e-tribes. The electronic tribe is defined as an exclusively narrow-focused, network-supported aggregate of human beings in cyberspace who are bound together by a common purpose and employ a common protocol and procedure for the consensual exchange of information and opinions. Plains of Telara is a fantasy MMORPG released in 2012. This is a good example. Individuals belong to a tribe. The tribe has a name created by the players. The game may have more than 100 members who may log in and out of the world of Telara at any given time. It's not unusual with such a tribe to have 50 or more logged on at any one time. There exists within the tribe a hierarchical structure of power. A guild leader is chosen who has council of about 8 officers that he or she collaborates with to determine guild protocol and procedures. This hierarchy also consists of senior members, and recruits. The officers gather new recruits, resolve conflicts between the members, set up guild events, and pass the information through the website portal. Members must register on the website to sign up for events usually called raids, in which members group together to complete the highest end content in the game. Recruits need to apply for membership through the website as well. The prospective recruits are interviewed on our Voice over Internet Protocol, or VoIP, chat server, which runs on Ventrilo. It's a free voice chat for online gamers. In the Voice over IP chat room, members get to know each other's voices. They laugh together, have arguments, and even talk about real life. A clearly defined code of ethics is a dominant feature of the game. If a player commits to a guild event or a raid, it's considered rude to leave in the middle of the event. When a particularly rare item is found in a game, the guild has to discuss together who has the most merit to receive the item. It does not automatically belong to the finder. A sense of unity and companionship develops as members venture together through the game world. Competition against other guilds in the game world to obtain world firsts or completion of game content before any other guild is seen as a bragging right. Members become friends. The game becomes so important to some of the members that they spend more time with their guild friends than they do with their real-life friends. Cultural uprising appears to have taken effect over the past decade. People follow each other from older games to newer games. Some even find ways to meet in real life. Positive real-life personal relationships often develop as a result of involvement in virtual worlds. In terms of societal evolution, this concept is no longer just a game situation. These have become virtual environments that have spawned an entirely new societal culture. Exponential rate, it's hard to ignore possible side effects. Social, economic, and even political repercussions are possible. Some impacts are being seen in the real world. This $200 million industry of virtual world currency being sold for real world dollars, mentioned earlier, is just one example. It's estimated that virtual world for virtual world trading equals billions of dollars every year. This is strictly against end-user license agreement policy for every game company in existence today, with the possible exception of Second Life. Little enforcement can be done to resolve this particular issue. These exchanges are untaxed and unregulated. In addition, one should consider that every man-hour that is lost to the real world by virtual world players. Theoretically, and possibly realistically, those hours lost would result in a loss in gross domestic product. Since individual game players place monetary value on virtual houses and swords and wands and horses and spaceships and magic hats, some economists feel that these should count towards gross domestic product as well. Holodeck from the TV show Star Trek: The Next Generation. A holodeck serves as a perfect simulation tool. It can be programmed to act as any conceived environment. It can even be programmed with simulated people who are just as realistic. In the TV show, when the crew of the Enterprise is finished utilizing the holodeck for training purposes, they go back to their real-life work of operating the starship. Economics. Since the holodeck is free of charge, and it can be programmed to produce any scene desired, the question might well be asked, why would anyone want to do anything else? An activity B, and has the same cost in terms of money and time, then activity A will always be chosen. Castronova concludes, economics clearly predicts that all crew members would program the holodeck to produce their most desired fantasy existence and disappear into it. No one would be running the ship. No starship would do anything at all. If it ever turns back, the results could be catastrophic. Game programs remain limited in their simulation technology. Also, in most instances, a player gets little or no physical exercises. A few simulation products are aimed at ways to maintain fitness through interaction with the virtual world. These include Wii Fit and Dance Dance Revolution. Gaming community. A virtual game player needs a fairly expensive personal computer, running anywhere from $1,000 to $1,500, to be able to run most modern MMOs today. More elaborate gaming stations, which are required to run top-of-the-line games, can exceed $5,000. Require a subscription fee of anywhere from $10 to $15 a month. Many virtual game publishers are changing to a free-to-play model such as Sony Online Entertainment's EverQuest 2 in order to attract users. Sony began charging $15 a month to their 500,000 plus subscribers in 2005. Psychologists. A player cannot physically hug a virtual significant other or physically push a virtual child on a swing. Probably the most important factor, however, is the fact that the vast majority of individuals have to work in order to make a living, and the time required to participate in any of these virtual communities is in direct competition with the time required for participation in real life. Not only can an individual control video games using motion sensor technology, such as that found in Wii and PlayStation Eye, programs exist that allow the player to use his or her mind to issue commands using brainwave receptor technology. One example of this technology is found in MindFlex by Mattel. Research is incomplete on what happens when virtual worlds incorporate brain sensor and body motion technology into their interfaces. World economists are unable to conclusively predict whether or not people will be able to make a living selling virtual goods, just like the Chinese gold farmers. Psychologists are yet to determine if virtual worlds will reach a threshold where fantasy becomes just as valid and enjoyable as reality. In some respects, technology comes closer every year to reaching holodeck status. Economically, history has shown that technology becomes more efficient, smaller in physical size, and less expensive over time of this particular phenomenon, without creating an atmospheric level event. While this can only be viewed as personal speculation, no matter how much of an expert he is on the topic, he makes several predictions. First of all, larger numbers of people playing online games will result in even larger numbers due to social conformity. since they have both involved assessing the interest of large numbers of unassociated people, and will ultimately force fun into the policy agenda. 1. Mother, brother, friend, college graduate, business executive are capable of playing these games. The limited research available appears to confirm the potential for some serious scenarios that could arise from the upsurge of this social technological phenomenon. Our economy is already showing evidence of change from the existence of virtual property transactions and virtual money transactions. Businesses go about dealing with daily life. More research is needed to study and evaluate just how much individuals, groups, businesses are alienating themselves from each other by using network technology as the primary mode of social interaction. Thank you for listening today.